Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing my February wrap-up. The first book I read was New Animal by Ella Baxter, and this was an arc. I don't quite know why it was on NetGalley because I've seen it out in the shops and it was on my reading list, and I was like, oh, I'll wait until the paperback comes out because hardbacks are too expensive and I find them annoying to read. One day I was scrolling through NetGalley and there it was. I was like, well, let's see. And then I got it. It was an interesting read. So it's about this young woman, I think she's in her late 20s, and it's set in Australia, which I don't think I've ever actually read an Australian novel, which is a bit strange. And she works at her family's funeral service thing, and I think she's a mortician, or she does the makeup for dead people, which I love a bit of macabre stuff like that, although I don't think I could do it. Not that I'm squeamish, it's just that I'd always think about death and that's not healthy for me. Yeah, so already she's a bit of a strange person in a way because of her profession, which is perhaps the wrong thing to say because, like, someone's got to deal with dead people. And to be honest, you'll never go out of business, will you? Because people are always dying. So in this economy, maybe it's the way to go. But yeah, anyway, she works doing the makeup for funerals and goes through a bit of personal turmoil because it's literary fiction. So when is anyone ever mentally stable and happy in these books? Essentially, a member of her family dies and it hits her really, really hard, and she just kind of loses the plot, dives into very questionable situations, and it's an interesting perspective because it's told through first person, and so you get to know this character that feels very much like she knows herself and that she's very self-aware and can quote almost like therapy beats. But it's almost as if she doesn't listen to any of this and she doesn't actually know herself at all because she puts herself in these wild situations and crazy stuff happens. But yeah, so it basically is an exploration of life, death, sex and death, and finding yourself after losing yourself for so long. I thought it was great. I read it quite quickly. I did laugh quite a lot as well. There's quite smart, witty observances, and the family in it are just absolutely chaotic, and we love that. I don't know who the proverbial we is, but we do. Oh yes, absolutely sublime, this book. Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfield. Exquisite. Oh, literally. I listened to this on audiobook, which was a great idea and also a bad idea. So it was great because it was narrated brilliantly by, I've forgotten their names, insert here, and they very much inhabited these characters. So you had one of them that sounded quite clinical, who was the deep sea diver, and then there was the wife who's dealing with all the shit, who sounds much more warmer in the tone of voice. And that also reflects in the writing as well. Oh, the way this was written, it was exquisite. So the caveat to me reading it via audiobook is I wanted to underline every word. not quite, but there's just some passages in this that hit me because they just felt like me talking to me, which was a bit strange. And then there's others that just were weaved with wonderful language that just made you feel like, oh, and then other parts were just sweet and lovely. But yeah, I would describe this book, I think I wrote a blog post about it, which I don't know if anyone has ever read it. My blog, just open up Squarespace, sponsor me. Lol. Okay, yeah, so the blog post is called 5 Reasons Why You Must Read Wives Under Our Sea by Julia Armfield. Number 1, structure. This mysterious story unfolds in the alternating POV of 2 different characters, Miri and Leah. This adds so much tension and anticipation because as soon as you think you're about to hit a revelation, the story shifts to another character, which is wonderfully frustrating, and you just have to take the bait and be compelled to read on. Yes, very much so. Number 2, the prose. The descriptions, metaphors and similes used are beautiful, and there is a fluidity to the writing that shows Armfield to be a talent to watch, as this is surprisingly her debut novel. despite it reading like an author at the top of their game. I can't wait to see what Julia Armfield does next, which very much the case. The characters, number 3. Miri and Leah are fascinating characters, and their romance before juxtaposed with their struggles after is heartbreaking to read. I really felt a sort of affinity with Miri because of the way she thinks about things and the language she uses, which made for an even more interesting read. Number 4. The horror. Subtly horrifying, the story unravels slowly but masterfully, and it gradually gets under your skin in the best way possible. It feels very much like a sapphic Cronenbergian body horror flick, and I absolutely love that vibe. In fact, could we get a movie? Very much, very much. Number 5. Themes. The book explores themes of death, longing, religion, curiosity for the unknown, and the torture of waiting. That essentially is everything I wanted to say about this book, because I thought it was sensational. I think I gave it 5 out of 5 stars because I just had a wonderful time with it. Coffee break. Nothing quite like a cup of coffee in a Moomin mug. Isn't it so cute? Excusez-moi. Next book I read is Eyrbyggja Saga. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly because I am shit at pronouncing things. And Old Norse / Icelandic is just what the devil. It's a mystery. You look it on the page and then someone says it totally differently. Anyway, so last month I said I had started like a little course on medieval Icelandic sagas. I am now currently, I think, on week 4 of that course, and I'm loving it. It's so interesting, so fascinating, especially the week that I'm currently on, which is about women in the sagas. And I read this really fascinating essay, which I actually really enjoyed. I used to hate reading theory at uni because I just thought it was the dullest thing ever. Probably half the time because it was about books I wasn't interested in, because unfortunately with degrees half the time you have to read stuff you don't care about. But yeah, anyway, this one was about like female friendships in the Icelandic sagas. I'll leave a link down below if you're curious to read it, but it was really fascinating. It was talking about like Aristotelian ideals of friendship and how they're very male orientated, and then how that transfers into Icelandic sagas. Very great stuff. But anyway, back to Eyrbyggja Saga. This is 1 out of 3 Icelandic sagas that I'm currently studying. I am currently reading 2 others, so that is Njal's Saga and Grettir's Saga. So I won't talk about them this month because I haven't finished them. Eyrbyggja Saga is all about, the main character in it is this guy called Snorri Gordi. I don't know, but Gordy isn't his surname, Gorthi. That's like the title, so he's like an official in the area. But he just is a bit of a nutter, really. To be honest, they're all nutters in this. I didn't realise that it would be so funny, because I found myself chuckling throughout this. Everyone's pretty much called Thor. Well, they've got the prefix Thor. I think there's like 29 or 30 different characters, all with the prefix of their name Thor. So you've got Thorir, Thorgir, and too many Thors. I thought the Silmarillion was impossible to keep up with names. Eyrbyggja Saga enters the chat. Fucking hell, it was crazy, and I was so confused. Quite a ride to read, and I really enjoyed it. Snorri Gordi is a fucking sneaky bastard. Like, there's a scene where he goes up the mountain with someone and convinces them to enact this plan to get rid of these berserkers, and it involves like making them dig a road through a lava field, and then they go in a bathhouse and then get like basically roasted alive in a sauna, but like they manage to break out and then get just stabbed to death. It's very violent, but yeah, it's really fun reading sagas. I loved it. I thought it was great, and I can't wait to read more. Then I read a short story, The Garden by Tumi Adeyemi. It's another one of those short stories on Amazon, because I read The 6 Lives of the Saint last month, and I was just intrigued to see what other writers had contributed to like this little short story project. This one was quite interesting. Very much felt mysterious and unresolved, but I do love a bit of just like leaving readers in the lurch. It's essentially about this woman trying to find this garden which her mother went off to discover and hasn't returned. So she gets a guide, I think it's like in South America somewhere. She gets a guide and they sort of like just chat as their journey into this garden, and like feelings are developed, but then she has to leave. and that's the story. It's about the journey, not the destination. And then the final book that I finished reading in February was Han Kang's newest book, which isn't her newest book. I think it was written in like 2014 or something, but it's her newest work to be translated into English. And this is Greek Lessons. Who translated it? I think it's two people that translated this one. Yeah, Deborah Smith and Emily Yeh Won. I got this as an ARC, which, oh my god, to be given a Han Kang as an ARC is just everything I could ever hope for. And it was masterful, succinct, beautiful, like just the synopsis of the story about two people connecting. One is a woman who has lost her language, so she struggles to speak and then becomes mute because of past trauma. And then there's a man who is slowly losing his sight because of a genetic disorder or disease or something. Like, it degenerates over time. But essentially, he is a Greek teacher and she is a student in his class, and they sort of just slowly integrate into each other's lives, and it's very beautifully written, like masterful, like I said a second ago, because from the two different perspectives you get a woman who you can tell she's obsessed with language, which is kind of ironic, but it makes sense within the context of the story. So you've got these beautiful passages written with such compelling linguistic prowess. And then you've also got, from the man's point of view, he writes in letters quite a bit, so there's a bit of second person perspective which mildly killed me, but I still enjoyed it. And it's basically him describing things, and very much you can tell this is a man trying to capture everything possible before he loses his sight. And so that in itself is exquisite. Just the way these two different perspectives are written, focusing on the things that are happening to them. Yeah, I would read anything Han Kang has written. Like, can we get all of her work translated into English? And then when that has happened, I'm going to break into the Future Library, which is in Norway, I think, because she's donated one of her works to the Future Library, which I think it will be opened in like 21 something. I'll put the date in. But yeah, I think that whole project's fascinating. So the fact that there's writers writing for 100 years and then they'll open it and then there'll be literary works. But yeah, before I die, if everything of Han Kang's gets translated, I'm going to break into the Future Library and steal her final work. That'll be like an Ocean's 11 heist movie, but for books. Make it happen. Hollywood. Yeah, anyway, what am I saying? Let's stop being weird. Yeah. Brilliant, sensational, buy it everyone when it comes out, get it. That's me being a book influencer. God, influenza. No, stop being weird. And then finally, the book I'm currently reading. I've actually had this for years. Like, I think I bought it probably about 5 years ago. Don't know why I haven't read it. I was going through my books recently and just sort of looking at everything on my shelf and thinking, why have I got so many books that I haven't read? Why? So I decided to pick this up, and it's very compelling, very interesting. I'm like halfway through it. I pretty much read that all in one day. But essentially it is, well, I'll tell you the title. It's a concise Chinese English dictionary for lovers by Xiaolu Guo. Sorry, darling. Xiaolu Guo. I think that's how you pronounce her name. And what makes this a very interesting book is the way it's written. And like recently I've been reading very interestingly structured novels, which she loves. It's written from the perspective of a Chinese woman coming to England to learn English. So it's divided into months, and from the beginning we have a woman just basically arriving in England with a basic grasp of the English language. So her passages are very, fragmented, and then over the time that she's in the country, her writing slowly becomes more succinct. So it shows the progress of the story through the progress of her language learning, which I think's really, like, amazing. I love that. The character makes very observant and, quite frankly, very witty and hilarious observations about the English culture, like the food we eat, just some of the weird customs that we have that just don't make sense to an Eastern perspective. And she also talks about like individualism, collectivism. She also has a relationship with an older man in this. I think it's very, very interesting, and I know I'm going to read it and finish it very soon because it's just really compelling. Oh, The Independent says, an utterly captivating and disorientating journey both through language and through love. Yes, very much recommend this. I haven't finished it, so it might get really crap at the end, but I doubt it. Yeah, so they are all the books that I read in February. Let's get on to movies. Right, so the first film I saw in February was The Fabelmans, which is Steven Spielberg's latest movie, and it's quite a personal movie, so it's based on his, I don't know, like the match that lit a spark, an inspiration for filmmaking, and like his family growing up as a Jewish man in America and discovering the beauty of film. I thought it was a delight to watch. It did drag in places, but the parts that just sort of made me think, oh, this is beautiful, this is stunning, this is cinema, were the moments where he was making movies. So it just kind of had this nostalgic charm to it, and just sort of the discovery of the magic of cinema. And then it just made me think, oh my god, I want to be a filmmaker. As I'm wont to do whenever I watch an exquisite piece of cinema, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna make a movie without any skills, any connections. Brilliant. Yeah, like I thought it was delightful. There's some bits that are quite sad in it as well. Michelle Williams' portrayal of the mum in the movie's very complex and compelling. Like, I thought it was pretty good. Next, I watched a shit film. The Pale Blue Eye, which is like a gothic detective mystery starring Christian Bale, some other guy, and then Charlotte Gainsbourg. Although she's barely in it, to be honest, which is a shame because she's amazing. And it's set like in America in the 18th century, when Edgar Allan Poe is alive. I don't know when that is, because Edgar Allan Poe is a character in this, which feels a bit like contrived. But yeah, it was just so disappointing. Like, the vibes were cool, like loved the gothic imagery and like the cold, frigid landscapes, very like Nordic noir-esque, but in America. But yeah, ultimately it was just quite boring, and it felt like a waste of Christian Bale and everyone involved. Shame, really. Next, I watched The Whale, which, Jesus Christ, I knew it was going to be a tough watch, but I don't think I was ready because it made me weep. I went to see it with my sister, and afterwards I was just like weeping, and I think she like cried slightly, and there was me like But yeah, anyway, it was very powerful, very sad, very moving. It's about a man who has a lot of loss in his life, and he becomes obese and essentially trapped in his house because is too large to move. And there are scenes where he binge eats, and it's so sad because it's like a self-punishment, and yeah, it's really hard to watch at some points. And he also like tries to reconnect with his daughter, who makes it very difficult for him, but you can also understand from her perspective of how she was abandoned by her father. And also Hong Chow is always amazing. I love her so much, and she puts in such a beautiful, nuanced performance as Charlie's nurse and friend. And yeah, like, there's just some scenes where it just really choked me up inside, and powerful stuff. I love Darren Aronofsky. Like, I think he's a brilliant filmmaker. Then I watched 2 Norwegian movies randomly in a row, don't quite know why. One was Troll, which was like an action film based on like Norwegian mythology of like trolls in the mountains. Of course, it uses In the Hall of the Mountain King as like a refrain in it, because why would you make a troll movie without using one of the most famous pieces of music? I think it's called like In Dovregruben's Hall or something like that, which is interesting because the mountain range that is in the movie that the troll comes out of is the Dovre Mountains. So I thought that was like nice nod. Yeah, it was a bit fun. It was like your typical monster movie, action. It was just like, yeah, this is like a bit of popcorn cinema, because after The Whale I needed something light. And then I just dove straight back into tragedy with Betrayed, which is a story set during the Second World War about the Nazis coming to Norway and how basically Jewish people were just literally immediately segregated and basically betrayed by their own country, hence the name Betrayed, and were rounded up by their own people under the influence of the Nazis and put into camps to work the land and then get shipped off to Auschwitz. And Jesus Christ, was it sad. And I don't know why I do this to myself. I don't know why I do it. But yeah, like I watched the movie because I've wanted to see it for a while, and at the end of last month I subscribed to Viaplay because I didn't realise it was in this country already. But yeah, so basically I've watched loads of Nordic dramas, so get ready for that in a second. But yeah, like, oh my gosh, it was so sad. Then I watched After Yang, which is by Kogananda, who is like a documentary filmmaker turned filmmaker, and he did, what's that really stunning film, Columbus, which is gorgeous. It's all about like architecture and relationships in Columbus, Ohio. Beautiful, stunning movie. And so then I had to watch this film. I've been meaning to watch it for a long time, but I just didn't. But essentially this is set in the near future where robots are just part of everyday life. And there's a family who have a robot and then he breaks down, and then the father goes out to try and fix the robot. But it's very like introspective and poetic and just explores the idea of life and loss through the loss of a robot, which I thought was beautiful, because you could almost just make this very much a standard story and have it as a family member, flesh and blood, who die. But in a way, this robot had become so integrated into this family's life that it was just as much of a loss as a real person, which I just thought was beautiful. Because like, it's almost, when you have poetic and very soft science fiction films like this, that you kind of think, oh, maybe the future isn't damned, like Terminator style. Maybe the rise of AI will be something nice. Beautiful performances from everyone involved. Really beautiful. Very sad. I cried at the end. Actually, I cried a few times throughout as well. Touching cinema really touches me. Then, to make myself happy again, I went to see Puss in Boots, The Last Wish. I went with my little sister and we just had such a lovely time. Like, it was just so cute, funny, and like beautifully animated, stunning. I love this sort of new wave of animation that's happening. Like, I loved Spider-Verse, and this just very much felt like more of an experimental film in that vein with a different style of animation. I just thought it was delightful. It was also quite relatable, somehow. I know how. Like Puss in Boots having a panic attack about the thought of dying. Been there, done that. That's something I loved as well. It's just like the idea of looming death in this. Bit dark, but great. Love it. But also, because I love fairy tales and like all those kind of stories, I love the spin on like Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Jack Horner was quite funny as well, like as a sort of corporate overlord. Yeah, like just it was fun. Like I had a blast. It was enjoyable. The Wolf, Jesus Christ. That was cool. And then the final film I watched in February was Le Corps. Rise. It's by Cédric Klapisch. I've been wanting to watch this movie for ages because I really like Deux Mois, which is another Cédric Klapisch film. And when I saw the trailer for this, I was like, oh yes, this is very much like a healing comedy, drama thing. And yeah, it was that. It's about a ballerina who, like, it's quite a typical story. She's a ballerina, so of course she's going to hurt herself and have to soul search. And what that comes as is she goes off to a retreat to help out her friend or her sister's boyfriend who's catering for a artist's retreat somewhere in France. And while she's there, a modern dance troupe come into this retreat, and then she's sort of inspired as she's healing because she hurt her ankle to explore modern dance, and she falls in love with it, and it's almost like a personal renaissance. Like, she loses her ability to dance ballet for the moment, and then she sort of discovers a whole new passion, and it kind of felt like quite nice to watch a film like that. Like, I've already said this, recently I lost my job, and I was just like, oh shit, what do I do now? So I had a personal crisis, and then watching a film like this, you kind of think, okay, it's not the end of the world. You can move on from this. So it was quite a nice time to watch this film. Like, it was just quite heartwarming and like hopeful, and we all need some of that sometimes. Like I said earlier, I subscribed to Viaplay because last month I watched a Danish movie that I'd wanted to watch for ages, which was like Hunger or something. Smagen om Furt. Why do I remember the Danish title? The Taste of Hunger. Yeah, like, and I found it, oh my god, it's on Viaplay. Oh my gosh, there's so many other things I can watch on here. So yeah. So then I just dived into like 100 billion different Norwegian, Swedish, and just whatever else dramas that I could find on there. I'm gonna quickly just go through them because there's too many. So actually, no, I want to talk about this one in quite a bit of detail because it was just insane. Exit, which is a Norwegian drama. It's very much given The Wolf of Wall Street meets American Psycho meets Succession. It's about like 4 really rich men. I think they all work in finance in some capacity. They are corrupt, disgusting, despicable lowlives who just have so much money. So like they get prostitutes, they take drugs all the time, like literally snorting whatever, and it's hilarious but disgusting at the same time. Like, they are vile human beings, and it's enjoyable but it's also rancid. There's one of them has a wife, and he just basically mistreats her. I mean, they mistreat their wives all terribly, but there's one particular guy that is literally a psychopath. Literally, it makes you feel sick the way he treats his wife. Her story is very interesting. There's 2 seasons at the moment, but I think a 3rd one has begun airing on NRK in Norway, but I don't know when it'll be on Viaplay, so I'm like, I need more. But yeah, like, it ended on a cliffhanger at the end of season 2 with this guy that's had a mental breakdown. He shot himself in the face and survived, and then has just been having a mental breakdown for the last 2 seasons, and then like he disappears at the end of season 2. Spoiler alert. Shouldn't have said that. Very interesting, but also horrifying. Furia, which is about like the rise of fascism in Europe, which is kind of very prescient at the moment. It starts in Norway, but then it moves into Germany, into Berlin, which we love a bit of German. But yeah, like, again, it's got one of the guys from the previous TV show. I swear this guy is in everything. I think his name's Paul Sverhagen, because I've watched like 3 different TV shows with him in it this month, accidentally. But it's funny, like, when you watch content from one country, like the country like Norway's quite small in comparison to like other countries, so like literally everyone in every TV show, you've seen them in something else probably 5 or 6 times. But yeah, anyway, so it's got 2 characters. One is like a special ops guy, and then the other is a undercover agent trying to infiltrate this right-wing group who are planning a terrorist attack. And so like these 2 people sort of try and foil this plan. It's very interesting, and like I said, very prescient with the unfortunate potential rise of fascism that's currently happening. Oh yeah, the other show with the same guy in it is Valkyrian. I haven't actually finished it yet. I think I've got like 1 more episode to go, but it's very interesting. It's like an underground clinic. So there's this guy who's like a prepper who has a job where he has to look after different underground places all around Oslo, like I don't know how to describe it, but essentially his job is just to make sure everything's secure underground in these like train stations and like other underground bunkers and stuff. But in one of them, he's set up a clinic with this doctor who's trying to save his wife, who's got a mysterious illness. I can't remember what the illness is. Everyone thinks she's dead, but he's like doing experimental medicine, almost like biohacking. Because it's like very do-it-yourself biology, but obviously he is a professional, so it's a bit more sophisticated than biohacking. But yeah, like, so he's trying to find a way to save his wife, who's currently in a coma, and to support that, the apocalypse guy goes around getting patients who don't trust mainstream medicine and don't want, for whatever reason, like criminals, illegal immigrants, so they could get deported if they went to a proper hospital and things like that, come to this clinic to be treated. And so it's like, is this morally wrong or is this actually good? But there's some things that are very questionably morally wrong. I'm not going to say it, but it's really interesting and I'm thoroughly enjoying it so far. And then the final TV show that, again, I haven't finished watching is Jorskott, which is a Swedish TV show, which like takes the very like Nordic noir crime mystery but makes it very fairy tale like, which, hello, yes. Like the title alone kind of got me interested because I kind of knew what it meant somehow. Like I have like a very small understanding of Scandinavian languages. Like jord means like earth, soil, because like Jormungandr, it just connected, like world serpent, jord, earth, world. Skott remind me of shot from Alpha Shot, which is like this idea that elves used to go around shooting arrows and making people ill. I just found it interesting. So it's like earth shot, but essentially it's about like the earth trying to fight back against destruction of the ecosystem, like in this little mystical forest, which I just thought, yes, we love climate change dramas. So yeah, like it's essentially about this mystical sort of thing that's happening in this forest, and people are getting infected by this disease that makes them plant-like. Very weird. But yeah, it's just like a little dark fairy tale and it's just very interesting and, like I said, so up my street. But yeah, like I've been enjoying my very Nordic month actually. I think that's everything. So that is my wrap up. Thank you for watching. Let me know in the comments section what you've been reading and watching in the month of February, and I will see you very soon. Don't forget to like, subscribe and all the good stuff. Bye bye.